I'm like, you could, in fact, get in the trunk and have this as protection from the wind and sit here and strafe if you needed to. That'd be kind of cool. What's up, people? I have to fix myself, i.e. my jacket because the zipper's screwed up. Isn't that funny? Look at this. I'm actually working on myself. But today, let's look at the Porsche 928 and review it so you guys know what to look for when you're trying to find one. And we know where we are when starting this build. So, let's check it out. Oh, doggone it. Man, how am I supposed to fix a Porsche if I can't fix my jacket? Let's go anyway. All right. So I think this is going to be a really great car. It's one that in its life, it came from the first family and it had a ridiculous story. I'm not even going to go into it, but the thing that's sort of fun about that is it sat around for a long time and didn't have any miles put on it. So it's just a hair over 32,000. It is functioning correctly, so I do believe that given the condition of everything as well and showing the paper trail. But when a car like this sits for so long, a lot of things take its toll. Come on and look in the interior first, I'll show you that. One of those is, especially if it sits outside, sun damage. That'll really hurt it, especially if these older cars are not garaged. And even if they are garaged, it gets rough. So first one is the fabric on these seats is absolutely just obliterated. It's lost. It's just lost all of its integrity. It's falling apart. So clearly that's terrible. The other thing you'll notice on old Porsches, they are very prone to the dashboards cracking. Same for 1980s Volkswagens as well. So come on in and you can take a look at that. Fortunately though, it is the main dash here that is cracked. The binnacle or the gauge pod is still perfect, so that's really nice. They do sell cheap covers and things you can just throw over top of it, but I think this is going to be a really good car with some love, so I want to make it right. That, of course, is going to have to be, I'm going to have to remove all of this dashboard and go from there. Fill it, sand it, whatever, recover it. It's going to be some work, but it'll be worth it. Fortunately, everything else is reasonably nice. The steering wheel also, the leather shrank, popped all of the stitching here, and went to pot. So, you know, you could, and I do have a Momo steering wheel hub, I could throw a Monte Carlo or Prototipo or something on it, and I might do that for fun because I really enjoy it. But this steering wheel is not bad. It's sort of charming for the time period, so I'll probably just have the leather recovered and restitched and restore that. So I'm going to order a new fabric that is just like the original from Germany. This one here, I don't think this is leather. I think it's vinyl type material. Yeah, it is a little harder now, but it seems to be supple enough that a good upholstery guy is going to be able to utilize the original stuff. Or worst comes to worst, perhaps put in new panels. I like to save as much originality as possible. I think people like to throw money at things and make them all perfect. I've seen it done in Ferraris and Lamborghinis in the past. But the second you completely redo the interior with new leather and all, it's not original. You know what I mean? And it loses that patina, it loses the age, it loses the originality, and they never look like they used to, no matter what snake oil the guy's trying to sell you. So really want to redo this, and I'm going to use a little bit of license. This car originally obviously had the pinstriping, but I am going to do the black and white checkerboard Porsche fabric, which was appropriate for the time period for the rear seats, front seats, and of course the door inserts. Gonna be a lot of fun. The shifter boot has seen better days. This is totally dried out. I don't think this is worth saving necessarily. I could try soaking it and whatnot, and I may do that in like neat's foot oil, but it's so hard that when you shift it, it's popped out the framework here. So probably just gonna get new leather on that. That one really does need to be supple and nice. This all needs to be cleaned up. I think the radio will probably work, but it's gonna need some love. One of the knobs is broken. The climate control here, the what do you call this thing? The selector knob for heat to cool is not working. Fortunately, the fans and everything work properly. The headlights work, although I do see that there's a little electrical gremlins with regard to lights coming on. But it could be bulbs or just basic wiring, so I'm not too afraid there. There's a little bit of warpage from the headliner here and here. Not the worst thing in the world. We'll see what I can do there. It's also kind of nifty. Look, there's actually sun visors for the rear seats. Never really seen that before. They're okay. They're a little crunchy and crusty, but whatever, they're all right. Fortunately, the carpet's nice, so we'll leave that alone. This is faded, but honestly, I could do a little bit of a dye or kind of an airbrush thing, darken that up and clean it up. And I think it's gonna generally be really nice. Work on the switches and stuff. And it's generally a pretty good car, even though it looks like a total rat. This is the kind of thing that's going to turn off snobby people that can't see the forest for the trees, don't know how to use a toolbox, have no craftsmanship skills. But for somebody intelligent like you guys that has some intelligence, want to put a little time and love into it, if you know where to source things and you know the little tricks, then you're going to be able to make a good car, the good base of the car, good mileage, good everything, running well, good oil pressure, everything like that, amazing, and you're going to come out ahead rather than losing money hand over fist. So let's go check out more of it. I'm going to open up the engine bay. All right. So the paint looks quite nice. I'm happy with that. The badge is definitely the old one. It's faded. It's showing some patina. It wouldn't hurt to put a newer badge on it just to shine it up a little bit. So the V8 in this engine, it has single overhead camshafts, and I've heard some neat things that people have used the heads off these to convert small block Chevys to actually be overhead camshafts with timing belts. It's interesting. I haven't looked into that, but it's fascinating, the architecture and the design, everything that went into these originally. Now, this car has the ubiquitous Bosch K-Jetronic based fuel injection system that was utilized all throughout the 1980s on basically every European car, from Lamborghini, Ferrari 308s, Volkswagen Golfs, you name it. Now, when you look at this, one will say, oh my gosh, that's too packed, I can't work on it. But actually, it's reasonable to work on. First of all, the air ducting system to bring cooler air from in front of the radiator to the big air filter, that can all be removed, gives you a lot of room. And then you can see the cam housings here and here for the overhead camshaft. They're down in there, might be a little tricky. And then of course, here's the plastic covers for your timing belts. So your timing belts and your ancillary belts here for everything is in a real nice to get to location. So that's actually relatively easy to work on. I have heard, I haven't confirmed this yet, and nor do I really just want to try, but this particular engine from this time period is allegedly a non-interference motor. So if the timing belt broke, the valves wouldn't collide with the pistons if that's the case. I want to confirm it. There's a lot of people going back and forth on what it is. Now, the Bosch K-Jetronic system on this, when I started it up, it was idling high. It was like 1,800 RPMs. Then when it warms up, it only came down to like 1,200. That's much too high. That could sense there's a bit of a vacuum leak. My Countach I had years ago, which was 1981, the first 5-liter in the States, was also Bosch K-Jetronic. That car was actually the prototype for fuel injection systems for Lamborghini at the time. And it also did that too high of idle thing, because the idle air bypass, which is right here, and the warm-up regulator, just gave it way too much for the sake of emissions back then. So there might be a bit of a vacuum leak helping to attribute to too high of an idle the whole way around. It could be adjustments on this, and also the nature of the emissions back then. They wanted to get the engine up, the RPMs up, to heat up your catalytic converter to knock down emissions. So I got to keep all of that in mind to get this thing functioning really nicely, and staying within the realm of legality, but also performing well. I also am not super keen on cars that go right up to a fast idle, because if you didn't have proper oil flow, it's a little hard on bearings and journal surfaces. Now, where this car is going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt, the Bosch K-Jetronic fueling system is buried down underneath the plenum here. That's kind of this airbox area, and the actual airbox. You can get to it, but it's going to require understanding what's happening with this, and when it's time to work on it, you go through, you make everything right, and use your confidence and good craftsmanship to make it's going to be right. If this is kind of the car where you're just going to like chase little parts and do things here and there, it's probably going to be the car to drive you nuts and you're going to think is junk. But that's not fair to the car, because one, you're not the right mechanic for it. And if you're judging a car that's now 40 years old by that, it's really not fair. So I think that the 928 is a fantastic car, and I'm looking forward to it. I think this is reasonable to work on, the early one here. Unfortunately, the clutch is good, the transmission's shifting quite well, and even though it seemed like second gear synchro was a little bit slow, somebody did tell me, Casey, don't forget it has that big shaft that goes all the way to the transmission, so you're slowing down a lot of things there. Meaning you've got more things spinning, the synchros have to do more work. So we'll see, and we'll flush it, we'll do proper fluids and everything in it. But I am going to put all fresh belts on this. I'm going to go fresh on the oil and the transaxle and the engine, of course, and be flushing the brakes and starting really fresh before I dive into this and start tuning it and going from there. Some people have said go on a long drive, let it heat up, do all that. I'm going to get to work on a few things before I do that. I think it's going to be all right. So we shall see. I did notice that if you open up the oil fill here, and this is fascinating. This is where the so-called German engineering comes into play, and I think where they go. So, you know, on a normal American car, you might see where, and you can see the froth here. And whether that's from condensation or blown head gas could be one of the other things. But that's where perhaps a long drive where the engine gets to heat up and the oil gets to heat up past the boiling point of water. When it heats up to that point, then it's going to boil all the water out of it. And as long as it's not getting more water in it from a source such as your coolant or blown head gasket, that'll boil out and you'll know. So that's how we're going to find out basically if it's an issue or not. And if it's a non-interference engine, or if the timing belt broke and would leave you stranded but not blow up your motor, basically, then I'm not too worried. So it might make sense to do that. I do have to take this down to a dealership to get my out-of-state inspection done. Ohio's really particular on titles, so that might be a good opportunity to do that. But of course, I want to make sure the car is safe and braking and doing everything well there. So pretty pleased with that. There's some other weird things that can happen I've heard of. I believe this is the motor here to make the headlights raise up, come in and out, and this is the prop rod to make that happen. In fact, I'm going to just go turn that on. I think that you guys might have fun seeing that. So Taylor, if you get that shot of the inner workings as well as the headlight, I will get them rocking here. All right, you ready? Oh, they're a little slow. Come on, baby. Oh, the battery's about dead. You can do it. Okay, so that's out and the battery's getting low. I do think this car has an issue with the charging system and alternator. I did notice that the volts were not showing a proper number of charging when it was going. So it may be at total discharge right now when you run it. Oh, gravity makes it easier. Who knew? So I'm going to have to go over that as well. But fortunately, everything looks nice. It shuts well. And come on back here. We'll check out the trunk area like we did on the 944. So I look like the guy from Scarface checking this thing out. I actually never saw that movie. I just looked up the clip the other day. Fortunately, that goes up well. And he was joking about it having machine guns or whatnot. I did think, if you think about the Avengers movie, I'm like, you could, in fact, get in the trunk and have this as protection from the wind and sit here and strafe if you needed to. That'd be kind of cool. So I don't know why they didn't do that in Scarface. It's kind of an Avengers thing. Anyway, let's see. So the seats will go down like that and give you trunk space. This is where the rest of the toolkit would be. Looks like I've got the tow hook, but if there were tools in there, they are not around right now. I think this is, what is this, probably a first aid kit here? Would make sense it being orange. Nope, those are light bulbs, old light bulbs. Okay, well, I will go after those. So this piece goes here. And that's an example of the time period. You know, things start to shrink and pull away. So if you're going to use the same material, you need to re-glue it and make it look nice. Otherwise, something like this is pretty easy to recover inexpensively. So something like that, I might just recover. So let's open this up and have a look at what we got to work with. You know, you can see the original trunk. It's not all wavy and wonkus from you know, from being in a wreck or something like that. This dust cover, this is top of the fuel tank, presumably, and could be the fuel sender. I'll look into it and see. I hope you guys don't flame me because I haven't worked on 928s yet, but it's obviously well within the scope of my experience on the fuel injection systems in cars in the past. There's the spare. It's a little funky. This was not in the car when I bought it. It could have been sitting out, who knows, in a barn or something forever. So obviously there's some moisture. The spare wheels on Porsches over time can do that because the paint wasn't really made to be withstanding of the elements for long periods of time and whatnot. And then your battery is back here for the sake of weight distribution. I'm not so sure if this ground is appropriate. Maybe it is. It seems kind of weirdly routed. So I'm going to have to check into that. Maybe the ground's actually supposed to go right there. And who knows if it's even the right size battery. There's some like rubber jammed in here. So we'll find out and make sure it's functioning properly and looking good. So there is that. But in terms of buying a 928, I do understand the people that freak out that these cars are going to cost a lot of money to maintain, repair, and fix up. So let's talk about that aspect on 928s for a second. Now, first of all, if you're going to work on one of these, you do need to be a good mechanic, okay? Attention to detail, understanding systems. Bosch K-Jetronic is a perfectly fine fuel injection system, hence why it was used on basically every European car for more than a decade. But when they sit for a long time, you're not using them, or they aren't running quite right, if you're not experienced with it, it can kind of be a pain in the butt and a total nightmare. And there's less guys that are really good at diagnosing that. So the key to something with K-Jetronic system is drive the car regularly, keep up on maintenance, and it's going to be happy and last a long time. You get into trouble when they sit. For instance, with DeLoreans, those things sat around forever because nobody drove them because the media ruined it for all the baby boomers. And then everybody thought they were junk. And the few people that didn't thought they'd be worth $1 bajillion in the future, so nobody drove them. Problem is the fuel injection systems and everything varnishes and goes to pot and becomes kind of a pain in the butt. Whereas if they would have just driven them, the car would have been a reliable, nice car for a long, long time. I know that because I daily drove them in all 4 seasons, including snow. And this is much the same way. But truthfully, it's just a car. It's just a car. It's got wheels, it's got brakes, it's got suspension, it's got an engine with pistons in it. So for somebody to snob on a car like this or anything else, it really just shows ignorance. And I always see the kind of people that say, well, that car's junk. I drove one and it was junk. And I'm like, okay, was it a nice car or did you drive a junky example? Oh no, it had 200,000 miles, it was rusting in the ground. Well, you drove a junky car. Why are you judging it? But this one is really solid, drives a nice straight line, appears to have newer brakes, newer tires. The interior looks like hell, but that's going to come right around with the restoration. It's going to be fun to put the work in. And got great oil pressure. It's not making any ugly noises. Shift's fine, clutch is fine. So I think this car is the perfect example to just give love, bring it back up, do the little detail things, make sure the engine is happy, make sure it's got all fresh fluids, timing belts and all, and enjoy it. Of course, it might be a pain in the butt now and then with electrical or something, but I'll sort it out, and that's some of the pride in making it right, because when you make a car like this right, and you know it, there's nothing better and more reliable, because if it has an issue, you can fix it just like that, and you have more pride and more confidence in it, even being an older car, because you know everything about the car. And that really is, I think, the joy of long-term ownership of interesting and exotic sports cars of different kinds. You will notice it does have a little older weather stripping here on the bottom of the glass. This is starting to crack a little bit. I'm sure it probably works okay. You know, it's pretty crusty. I could bust this out of here. So it might be well served to try to replace this weather stripping right there. The rest is supple enough to be sufficient. And I'm generally pretty happy. It does blow hot air when you want it to. I don't know if the air conditioning compressor works. We'll see. Hopefully it works all right. But in general, quite pleased, and it's going to be fun. I am going to go a bronze or a gold kind of color on the wheels when I restore that. Do a powder coating because I think it'll look good and period correct. And of course, we're going to do the Porsche fabric. I hope you guys will stay tuned. Obviously, I'm doing the 944 build and bringing that back to life and enjoying it. And we're going to do one with a 928 too. So, and I'm going to keep making fun of snobs because I think they ruin stuff for everybody. And I want to show you all how, if you use your mind and look at things correctly, know when to get help from mechanics or craftsmen and when to do it yourself, you can probably have a great, enjoyable long-term ownership with this and thumb your nose at the snobs who don't know anything about cars and are not real car guys anyway. So I hope you guys will like, comment, and of course subscribe. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I look forward to be driving both of these cars come this spring and see you all out there enjoying your cars as well. Catch you guys next time.